I'm sorry, I have to end today at 1:40 and really 1:40 sharp. So we'll end a few minutes earlier than we are scheduled to end. So we'll try to get started right away. This is our fourth class in this. If you never learned Midrashim, just to review the different kinds of Midrashim that we have seen. The first class was focused on those Midrashim that was really focused on just sort of like one word, one extra word. What does this word signify, mean? And the second class were the Midrashim about the stories of the Egel HaZahav, and the Midrashim are really interpreting and adding to the Psukim, really elaborating the story that is in the Torah. Then the third class, last class, we had our stories about, two stories about what happened when Moshe went up to Shemayim, Moshe going to Rabbi Akiva's classroom, and the fighting with the angels. And we said that's another kind of Midrash, which is really less focused on Psukim in the Torah. It's not like it's interpreting a story in the Torah, but it's a parable, a teaching, and that Chazal set in the context of the Torah. So this fourth class, we're going to do another kind of Midrash. Technically, maybe it shouldn't be classified as a Midrash. And that's going to be two examples of stories in the Gemara, but it could be in other collections, that are of stories of the rabbis themselves. Okay, so maybe these are not technically Midrashim, because we discussed in the first class, Midrash really means to be doresh, which means to delve into and to seek out and to bring out new interpretations of the Psukim. These two stories are really not really connected to Psukim at all, even though they will tangentially quote Psukim, but they are, again, stories of the sages themselves. Now, on the one hand, to me, I certainly believe, and I think everyone would agree, that these stories are, how are these different than what we studied? These are going to be stories that are based on actual events, right? And events post the Tanakh. And there are many such stories. There's stories between Rabbi X is talking to Roman Governor Y, or different stories about different discussions between the different sages, the Chachamim, or important stories about their lives. So they are historical. At the same time, Chazal were not interested in giving historical biographies of all the Chachamim, and the stories that were included were obviously meant to teach certain lessons. And they're told through that prism. So, I would certainly think that therefore they are presented in ways that obviously will focus on certain details, not others, or maybe they border the kinds of parables. So, if let's say there's a story about two different sages arguing. So if the Gemara says, and when Rabbi X and Rabbi Y would fight, fire would shoot forth from their mouths. I don't know. I just made that up. I'm not thinking of a certain Midrash. Obviously, that's a certain way of trying to explain and give the feeling of what it was like to be there. It doesn't necessarily mean literally that's what was happening. So it is based on historical facts, but it's not presenting them as a detached historian would. It's presenting in a way to teach ideas, to teach lessons, to teach morals. Okay, we're going to see two stories about Rabbi Yochanan. Who was Rabbi Yochanan? Rabbi Yochanan is one of the most important Chachamim of the Gemara. He is a relatively early sage of the Gemara, the second generation after the close of the Mishnah, and he lived in Israel. Maybe it was the last great of the Gemara sages in Israel. And he is generally considered to be the editor of the Talmud Yerushalmi, which is the version of the Gemara, the discussions of the Mishnah that were written based on the discussions of the sages of Israel, which was edited and closed about 200 years before the Talmud Bavli, not studied as much as the Talmud Bavli, the regular Gemara. So Rabbi Yochanan was the editor of that. He was the great sage, this leading sage of Israel, and one of the great sages, both between Israel and Bavel, Babylonia. And even though he stayed in Israel, many of his students went to Bavel, which was becoming the stronger Jewish community. And in that way, many of his teachings were brought to the yeshivas in Bavel, and therefore he is quoted all over the place in the Talmud Bavli, meaning our regular Gemara. And he is certainly he is a very prominent sage of the Gemara, extremely important, whose opinions are given, great significance and weight. And he probably is the sage who is quoted so, commonly with such force in both the Talmud Bavli and Talmud Yerushalmi. So, but the bottom line is he is one of the really important sages of the Gemara. That certainly is unquestionable. So we're going to see two stories about his life, both relatively well known. One is very often quoted. Any questions about any of that after that little introduction before we actually see the stories? Okay, great. What was there something? Sorry, I'm going to share my screen. Now, I'll be honest with you, I have not had as much time to prepare for this shiur as to my other shiurim, so this will be even more of a discussion. I don't have as many strong theories of how to interpret all of these stories. Certainly I have some questions and some points, but we're going to learn it all together. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Great, here we go. So this first is from Tanis Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph. Here we go. Ilfa, that's a person's name, the Rabbi Yochanan. And let me actually scroll down a little bit, so we'll try to get as much English as possible. Oh, that's a little too much. Ilfa Rabbi Yochanan, Havi Garsi Be'oraisa. Ilfa, a sage of Israel, and Rabbi Yochanan, they were studying Torah, meaning for a long period of time, years. Ilfa's a little older than Rabbi Yochanan, or is older. Dechika lehu milsa tuva. But it became, the pressure became great. And what that means is they were very poor. And they just didn't know how they're going to be able to continue studying Torah. Amri, so they said, Nakum v'nezel, let us get up, like kum, and let us go. V'ne'avid iska, and let us go get jobs. That's what that means, right? Like like to be oved, to work. And I think in modern Hebrew also, asek is like business. Unakayim, and let us. One second. I think I have to download this. When I'm just in the preview, it's the Hebrew is a little messed up. Hold on 1 second. Let me take you off the share for 1 second. So Ilfa and Rabbi Yochanan are studying together. They're in the yeshiva. They're in the great yeshivas. They lived in northern Israel in Tiberia, and they're studying. They're both already considerable sages, but they're so poor they can't survive. Hold on 1 second. All right, we have a little bit of an issue with the Hebrew here, but we're going to read it, and I'll put up my screen again. I apologize, but you'll trust me, and I'll show you how to read it. It's going to kind of go right to left, left to right. Okay, let me get it. Okay, we're gonna just follow me along. I apologize. You'll listen. The English should be correct. So they said, let us go get a job. Unakayim benafshin, and we'll fulfill with ourselves. Efes kiloya b'cha evyon. Indeed, there will be no poor person in the land of Israel. That pasuk is in the context of Shemitah. It says everyone should observe Shemitah, and even though that means you can't plant, can't harvest, there's a promise. God says, there will be no needy amongst you. So what are they saying? They're saying, we're poor, we're starving. The Torah says there should be no needy. Let us go get a job and we'll make a living. Azlu Osfi Tusi Guda Re'ia. They went and they sat beneath a shaky wall, which is the typical example in the Gemara of something which is dangerous, precarious. Havika Karchi Rifta, and they were sitting there breaking bread, eating bread. Asu Tre Malache Ashares. And as Ilf and Rabbi Yochanan are sitting there on the ground, leaning on this rickety wall, eating bread, two angels appear. Shame Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan overhears them. Da'amar chad l'chavre, and one of them says to the other, one angel says to the other, Nishti alayu, hi Gudo, we should push this wall on them. Vinaktalinu, and kill them. Shemanichen chaye olam haba, because they are abandoning the pursuit of the world to come, studying the Torah. The oskin b'chayisha, to go pursue matters of this world, a job, whatever they're going to do. Amar le idach, but the other angel responds to the first angel. Shavkenu, leave them be. De'ika buchad, because one of them, dekaima le shata. One of them, his time is coming. There's something important in store for him. Rabbi Yochanan Shama. Rabbi Yochanan overheard the angels. That should be Ilfa. Ilfa lo Shama. But Ilfa didn't hear the angels. Amar Rabbi Yochanan la Ilfa. Rabbi Yochanan said to Ilfa, Shama mar midi? Did the master, I mean, because Ilfa was the older one. Rabbi Yochanan says, out of respect, did the master hear that? Amar le, Ilfa says, lo, no. Amar, Rabbi Yochanan said to himself, Mideshame ana, since I heard it. The Ilfa lo shama, and Ilfa didn't hear the angel saying this. Shma mina lididi kaimali shaita. It must be that I am the one who is destined for something great that the angels were talking about. Everyone good with me so far? Everyone following the story? Okay, starting in the middle of the line. I'm sorry, the lines are a little messed up here. Amar le Rabbi Yochanan. So Rabbi Yochanan said to Ilfa, Ihadar, I'm going back. I'm going to go back to the yeshiva, and I'll somehow suffer and figure it out, and I'll learn. Ihadar, I'm going back. V'uki b'nafshai, and I will fulfill in myself. There's another pasuk in the Torah. Ki lo yachdal evyomi kerev haaretz. There will never cease to be poor in the land. This is in the midst of tzedakah. It says you have to help your fellow Jew. There's always going to be someone in need. You have to help him. The Torah says there will always be someone poor. I will live by that pasuk. Rabbi Yochanan Hadar. And so Rabbi Yochanan went back. I'm sorry, it goes to here. I'm not sure why the lines are like this. Ilfa lo hadar. You can follow along maybe in English. Ilfa did not go back. Ad asa Ilfa. But when Ilfa finally returned after going out and being a merchant business, whatever he did, he returned to Tiberia. When he came back, he found out Malach Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan had become the Melech, the Rosh Yeshiva. Amru lo, and the people said to Ilfa, the returning Ilfa, who was also a great scholar, I asiv mar v'garis, if the master would have remained and continued to study, lo havi malach mar, wouldn't the master have become the Rosh Yeshiva? If Rav Yochanan stayed and he became the Rosh Yeshiva, but Ilfa was older, more senior, Rav Yochanan looked up to Ilfa, he called Ilfa the master. So Ilfa, if you would have stayed, you would have become the Rosh Yeshiva. I'm here, this line. Tala nafshe b'iskaria desfinasa. Ilfa went up and tied himself to like the top of the mast of his ship. Seems like he was a merchant on a ship. Amar, and he said, if there's anyone here who could ask me a question about any of the teachings of Rav China of Oshia, velo pashtin, and I cannot explain it to you, lay mi masnisan, and show you how they are sourced in a Mishnah, again, to demonstrate his great scholarship, that he still was this great Torah master. If I can't match anyone's question, nafilna meiskarya de sfinasa vitavana, I will jump down from the top of the ship and I will drown. We'll leave it for now. And then the third paragraph that says someone asked him a question about a certain brisa, and he answered it on the spot. Okay. Any reactions to this story? And what do you think this story is about? Why is this story included? What lessons are we supposed to learn from this story? Or what questions are there about this story? What is the issue the story sort of grappling with? More than one. Any thoughts?
Well, it's the conflict between the mitzvah of supporting yourself and not relying on the community for tzedakah, with Talmud Torah, where we learn in, again, it's a Mishnah or Braita, Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam, we say it every morning.
Right.
So he was grappling with the conflict.
Correct. Excellent. Right. And whether or not he's being supported by tzedakah, and even if he's not, even just, are we all supposed to be poor and living in poverty so we can study Torah, and nothing else, and not be making a living. Is someone else going to say something? That's definitely one issue in the story. That's one issue the story is grappling with.
Rabbi, focusing on the latest part, it seems that Ilfa is not inferior to Rabbi Yochanan. So it more raises the question how we select Rosh Yeshivas and whether there's a stigma of someone involved in business.
Excellent. Okay, so let's try to put some of those comments together. So Ilf and Rabbi Yochanan are this pair. It sounds right. The story begins, Ilf and Rabbi Yochanan, we're studying Torah together. And then they're both poor and suffering. And then they both decide to go make a living. And then there's this moment where Rabbi Yochanan hears this, and then they diverge. And then they take different paths. Rabbi Yochanan goes back and he says, I don't care. I'm just going to learn even though I'm living in poverty. And Ilfa goes and goes to make a living. So one sort of question is, from the story, right, who was right? Right? Does the story end with a clear winner?
No.
It doesn't, right? It doesn't. On the one hand, saying it seems to be saying at some level both are right, right? Rabbi Yochanan goes back, and for him it works. He becomes a Rosh Yeshiva, and he's teaching the students Torah, and that's his path. So he, was, to put it differently, was Rabbi Yochanan wrong for turning back? Meaning, did he misinterpret the angels? It seems like he did not. It seems like what he did was right. But then Ilfa comes back, and on the one hand, right, at first the people seem to be criticizing him, like you're saying at first, right? Ilfa, you should have stayed. If you stayed, you would have been the Rosh Yeshiva. But the story doesn't really end there. The story ends with Ilfa being able to defend himself and say, let's see if anyone can best me in Torah, and they can't, right? So it seems to be validating Ilfa also, right? It doesn't come down criticizing Ilfa.
Does he have to become a Rosh Yeshiva?
No, that's a good. You mean who, Ilfa or Rabbi Yochanan?
Ilfa, right? If he's a Talmid Chacham on his own.
Correct. Absolutely. It is saying, I would say, right, it seems to be saying the model, we'll call it Balabas, who and all of you people fall now into that category, right, is, let's say, Ilfa, and he goes and he works. He clearly also continued to try to study Torah, right? It wasn't all or nothing. It wasn't like either you learn or you leave the base Midrash and never learn, right? This Gemara is not about the one learning Torah and the philanthropist who does not learn but supports the person learning Torah. It's about. Yeah, sorry, who wanted to say something?
How does this? You're just about to talk about the point I was going to ask. And
Yeah,
that
please,
is
so let's hear Steve.
the story of the tribe of the Susker supporting, I forget which other tribe it was, so they could study Torah. And the Susker were the merchants. Do I have that
Exactly right. So
story
this,
correct?
right, so this, exactly. So that is a model that Chazal speak about also, right? This is not exactly the same thing, because first of all, right, Ilfa is the one who, he was a great scholar. You could say it's better and worse, right? Because Ilfa was a great scholar, but left the yeshiva, right?
This is
Right, and it's not like someone who never had an education. He was a great scholar. He was on the level of Rabbi Yochanan, but then he felt he needed to leave. But he also continued to study on a very high level. But he wasn't the Rosh Yeshiva. That's correct.
I think there's more to it, and that
Mhm.
is that to be appointed a Rosh Yeshiva, your level of knowledge in learning is not the only criterion for
For being a
fulfilling
good Rosh
that
Yeshiva.
role. And the difference between Ilfa and Rabbi Yochanan is not that one was right and one was wrong and one is good and one is bad, that to be a role model as a Rosh Yeshiva requires something more than the combination of being in business and being a Talmid Chacham at the same time.
Absolutely, absolutely. To let's say, to sort of elaborate on that point, it's interesting if you go back to the beginning of the story. So we have here different paths, but they clearly are linked, right? So they were a pair that studied Torah together. Then they were a pair that decided to go out and explore working together. Then even in the scene when they're sitting beneath the shaky wall, so one angel says, we should kill both of them for leaving the yeshiva. And then the other one says, no, we can't. Why? Because one of them, he's supposed to go do something great. So let me ask a question. So kill the other one. Now, first of all, it's not, at first you think, by the way, I saw some modern writers, it seems like Rabbi Yochanan is the one who said he's destined for greatness. After the story's done, maybe he wasn't talking about Ilfa. Maybe it wasn't about Rabbi Yochanan, maybe it was Ilfa even. But
You're right, yeah.
So kill one and save the other. But what is the angel saying? No, they're together, they're a pair, they are linked. Somehow they support each other. And even though only one is going to be the Rosh Yeshiva, but both need to live. Does that make sense? Or do people hear at least a little bit what I'm sort of pointing out? How the Midrash is trying to say they're tied together. You can't separate them.
Yes, but also, yes, I agree. But why kill either one of them, I think, is the message. Just because one angel felt that one of them deserved Misa, or whatever the true meaning of that means.
Right.
Why either one of them? They were probably both tzaddikim.
I agree. Did someone else have a comment? I have something to say, Howie, but did someone else have a comment?
Yeah, I agree. Like you're pointing out, there is ambiguity here. Rav Yochanan made the decision. The angels are talking to him, but the story doesn't. Right?
Exactly. So meaning to point to Howie's point, because I think you're right. It can't be that the Gemara is saying Ilfa should have died. It doesn't make sense. So again, the Midrash is pointing out, like, what did Rabbi Yochanan hear? But what did Ilfa hear? Or maybe that's just what the angels wanted Rabbi Yochanan to hear, but that's not really the truth.
It seems like Rabbi Yochanan needs to hear because he needs to make a decision. And maybe Ilfa doesn't need to make a decision. He's going to become a Talmid Chacham anyway. And he proves that. So maybe Rabbi Yochanan, whatever his character is, he may be not to become Talmid Chacham while working.
Yeah, excellent. These are all excellent points. maybe we should just stick to one story, but I do want to touch on the second story. But so just to round out that point and share a few other things to think about. So what is this story about? This story is about the tension of staying in yeshiva, going out of the yeshiva. Ultimately, it's validating both, but it's also showing how it's a complex question and depends on the person. It's a really beautiful Gemara about sort of making personal decisions and on the spot, and what does one person hear and the other person doesn't hear. And it also is just part of the story of the greatness of Rabbi Yochanan. Remember, Rabbi Yochanan grows up to be the Gadol Hador. So this is part of his like Genesis story, that part of the identity of Rabbi Yochanan was A, he suffered through poverty in the beginning of his life. B, that Rabbi Yochanan almost didn't be, right? Meaning Rabbi Yochanan almost did not become the famous Rosh Yeshiva and leading scholar. He would have been a scholar probably, but it almost worked out differently. So this is also just about a tradition of how did Rabbi Yochanan come to be who he was. We're going to leave the last paragraph. People can read it and think about themselves how that last paragraph might connect to the beginning of the story. Okay, let's see the second story. Again, I apologize. Maybe we'll just even read the English because the Hebrew, I'm sorry, I didn't check it before. And again, if you came a little bit late, I have to end at 1:40 today. Okay, let's just read the English again here. One day, Rav Yochanan was bathing in the Jordan River. Same Rav Yochanan. Reish Lakish saw him. Who was Reish Lakish? Reish Lakish would be Rav Yochanan's counterpart, another incredibly significant sage of the Gemara. But he began his life as a bandit.
Yeah.
So this is the story about how Rav Yochanan and Reish Lakish meet, and the story of Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish saw him and jumped into the Jordan, pursuing him. At that time, Reish Lakish was the leader of a band of marauders. Rav Yochanan said to Reish Lakish, he sees him jumping, and now what is Reish Lakish doing? He's jumping in to attack him. It's a little vague. And he says to Reish Lakish, it's better, and honestly, I think it's better in the Aramaic. Your strength should be for Torah. I see in you this great strength. And Rav Yochanan was a famous rabbi. Once Reish Lakish saw Rav Yochanan, he saw who he was. He knew he was this great rabbi. Reish Lakish said to him, your beauty, Rav Yochanan was known to be very handsome, is fit for women. Now that's vague. You can read that as your beauty should really be on a woman, like only women should be so beautiful. Or it can mean your beauty should be used for women, to attract women. If you would see the Hebrew, you would see that. Rav Yochanan said to him, well, if you return, meaning if you do tshuva, I will give my sister to you in marriage, who is more beautiful than I am. Reish Lakish accepted upon himself. Reish Lakish wanted to go back to the other side of the river and get his clothes. Now this is, I'm not sure, is a good translation. It's K-love, which means it could also mean his items or even his weapons, but he couldn't go back. Rashi explains because his physical strength was diminished, even just once committing to leave his life as a bandit and accept the yoke of Torah weakened him. And so what happened? Rav Yochanan taught Reish Lakish Bible, he taught him Mishnah, and he turned him into a great man, meaning a great scholar. Now one day the Chachamim were studying the Beis Midrash, and they were engaged in a dispute. And they quoted a brayso, an earlier source, which says, the sword, the knife, the dagger, the spear, a hand sickle, and a harvest sickle. When are they susceptible to ritual impurity? Because a vessel or an item, only when it's finished can it become ritually impure. But sometimes it's unclear when is a vessel considered finished, what stages are absolutely necessary. So the brayso says from the time of the completion of its manufacture, when it's done, when it's made. So the sages in the Beis Midrash asked, and when exactly is the completion of the manufacture? Rav Yochanan says, when one fires the item in the furnace. And Reish Lakish said, he argued, and said, no, when you scour it in water, which is after the fire in the furnace. Rav Yochanan said to Reish Lakish, he took offense to this. And obviously there must have been tension between the two of them, besides for this one incident. And he says to Reish Lakish, well, a bandit knows about his banditry. but he was saying it's an insult, sarcastically. He's like, well, you probably know about how to, when a weapon is considered done. So Rish Lakish said to Rav Yochanan, and what benefit did you provide me? What are you so sure of yourself for? This is all very difficult to understand. There among the bandits, they called me leader. Here I'm also called a leader, a master. Rav Yochanan said to him, well, I brought you close to God. And the fight broke them apart. As a result of the fight, Rav Yochanan was offended. And Rish Lakish turned ill. Some understand that Rav Yochanan, like it was in the merit of Yochanan, Rish Lakish was punished. Or again, we'll see they were like best friends and they're falling apart. And it killed Rish Lakish. He became ill. So Rav Yochanan's sister, again, remember who was married to Rish Lakish, came crying to Rav Yochanan and said, pray for him. She said, do it for my children so they won't be orphans. And Rav Yochanan said, the pasuk says, leave your orphan children, I will take care of them. She said, do it for me so I won't be a widow. The pasuk says, let your widows trust in me. Ultimately, Rish Lakish died. Rav Yochanan didn't stop it. He didn't pray for him. He didn't help him. But then after Rish Lakish dies, Rav Yochanan was sorely pained over losing him. And the rabbi said, let us go try to calm him down. They said, we'll send Rav Elazar ben Padat, who was the greatest up-and-coming sage. Elazar ben Padat went and sat before Rav Yochanan, and with every matter of Yochanan would say a halacha, and then Elazar ben Padat would provide him support. This source supports you. This source supports you. And Rav Yochanan said to him, who do you think you are? You think you are the son of Lakish? You think you're Rish Lakish? When I would learn with Rish Lakish, everything I would say, he would bring up 24 difficulties, 24 kashas on me. And I would have to answer him with 24 answers. And the halacha by itself will become broadened and clarified. You say to me, every time I say something, you bring something that supports me. Do I not know what I say makes sense? I know what I say makes sense. I don't need someone to tell me, a yes man, that shkoyach. Rav Yochanan went around, presumably this is over years, rending his clothing, weeping and saying, where are you, son of Lakish? Where are you, son of Lakish? And Rav Yochanan screamed until his mind was taken from him. He went crazy. And so the rabbis prayed and requested that God should have mercy on him and take his soul. And Rav Yochanan died. There's a lot in that story. And we only have about 5 minutes to discuss it. But so again, this is the story. Basic points. Where did Rish Lakish come from? How did this bandit turn out to be this great scholar? It's about this incredible bond between Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish, but also how it falls apart. There's so much to talk about. Anyone want to just pull out any 1 or 2 things that really struck them? What you think the basic message of this story is? There's several.
I'll take a stab at it.
Yeah, go for it, Howie.
One, they had such a close friendship, but it was the pride of Rabbi Yochanan for getting insulted that caused all of the bad things that happened. It was like a chain reaction. And
yep.
Okay, so that's one thing. The second thought is that it was only after Rish Lakish was gone that Rabbi Yochanan realized his godless. It's just like in Bereshis that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made Chava Ezer Kenegdo, that what we really need in life from our spouse or best friend is to help him by sometimes being Kenegdo, which in the Rabbi Yochanan's case would have sharpened his mind and the arguments that he made for Torah.
Excellent. Let me just respond to that, but I want to hear some more thoughts. One is very interesting. This Gemara does seem to be, pointed out a mistake of Rabbi Yochanan, and that he later realized it was a mistake. So it is interesting. Again, Rabbi Yochanan is one of the greatest sages, and it does not take away from him. But the Gemara is willing and actually wants to record what it felt was a mistake of Rabbi Yochanan. So that's just in general an interesting point. How he's definitely right that part of the story is about that Rav Yochanan and Reish Lakish, like he said, they used to argue tons. And that though he realized that was productive, but it's hard because part of the reason why they're productive was because there was a tension between them, because they're of different minds. You know, I assume it is to some degree symbolic. They're arguing about when does the dagger become tameh, and what Rav Yochanan says when he put it in the fire, and Reish Lakish said no, when he put it in the water. One is fire, one is water. Maybe there's even more symbolism in that, but just that they were opposites.
Opposites, yeah.
And so on the one hand, that was what was so creative and so productive, but it's also that's hard to hold together. It is hard to hold together. There's going to be some tension because that's the whole point. They see things differently. They argue, and they couldn't hold on to the tension. The tension ultimately led to a fight. Any other thoughts?
One point is, interestingly, you connected these two stories. So in both cases, the protagonist is someone who is not just a Talmid Chacham, but also does something else before or after.
Yep. Reish Lakish here. Yep.
Right. And also it highlights about Rabbi Yochanan that maybe he would not be able to survive outside of yeshiva. You see, he can't deal with adversity in the right way and accept other opinions. That surely in the business meetings, you'll have to listen to people with a lot of different opinions and remain self-confident.
I hear.
You have to be a Rosh Yeshiva to learn.
I hear.
But there's one other thing.
Yes, Jeffrey, please.
Reish Lakish makes use of his former life of knowledge he gained and expanded in his Torah. In other words, it actually
Excellent. That's also a point of I'm sorry for cutting off Jeffrey. Rav Yochanan to some degree is like pulling him away from his world. Right? Come with me, leave your world behind. And Rav Yochanan can't understand that world. Why that world is like a horrible anti-Torah world. It's such an interesting way. I never thought about it. And what causes the fight between them is that Reish Lakish is able to interpret a piece of the Torah because of his previous knowledge of maybe really not a good life, honestly, but at the end of the day, it helped him interpret the Torah. And that's actually what puts Rav Yochanan over the edge. How are you bringing in your knowledge from when you were a bandit to interpret the Torah?
Exactly.
And that's a really interesting point. That is fascinating. I did not think of that.
That's a positive lesson for all of us.
Absolutely. Yes. There certainly is a way to use what you've learned. Maybe that's another message of the story, that even Rav Yochanan, we're not talking about like a nice, sophisticated education. This is Reish Lakish was a bandit. And even that, there was a way for him to productively use it and help him interpret the Torah.
What's the halacha on daggers eventually?
That's a good question. So the rule is that actually, as a general rule, whenever there's a machlokas in Rav Yochanan and Reish Lakish, halacha is always like Rav Yochanan. There's except for 3 or 4 cases. I can't remember. I'll have to look up if this is one of the exceptions. It could be that actually we ultimately actually even accept Rav Yochanan, but that doesn't on this particular technical halacha. But the idea that you can use it to interpret the Torah that doesn't have to negate that. But that's a very interesting question. I'll glean that or I'll double check that.
So the question
another follow-up on that thought. Just another follow-up on that thought is it was Rav Yochanan who got insulted and not Reish Lakish. Although from the way the Gemara presents it, is Reish Lakish was trying to convince him, I know about weapons.
Yeah.
And really, the Gemara Malacha for a weapon, I'm an expert in that. And yet when their friendship broke apart, it never describes Reish Lakish as being insulted that Yochanan didn't listen to his interpretation.
Right. If anything, right, it says he fell ill. It might have been he was even more just like saddened,
Correct.
Yeah. I apologize. I have to go. Last comment. Any last comments? Okay, so you can see, print it out. You can read it again. When you read the story, then when you read the story again, you will see new things. And again, thank you for everyone for their comments. I'm really seeing new things in the story from our learning. So again, Yasher Koach, everyone. So this is another kind of Midrash that we're studying together. And we have one more time to study next week before Shavuos. So I look forward to seeing everyone then. Thank you very much, everyone. Yasher Koach.
Thank you very
Shkayach
much.
to you.
Yeah.